Hey friends, thanks for taking time to listen in on a conversation Dick and I had about the 2024 drivers. Last year's end-of-year driver discussion garnered positive feedback from you, our audience, so we decided to continue that tradition. But before we get to our conversation, I need to ask, can you help us out? If you haven't already, please take a moment to follow us and give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, as well as share this episode with other F1 fans. We know our growth is because of you, and the guys and I thank you. Hope you enjoy our conversation. Dick, we are attempting to create a tradition. What do you think?
I'm all about tradition, especially when it makes sense.
Yeah. And this is one that I think makes a lot of sense, right? We give commentary on a lot of different things all throughout the year. And then for us to make a comprehensive, as we're trying to do, and this is part 1, I would say, of 2, where we're looking at, in this case, we're doing a report card of the drivers that have been on the 2024 grid. We did this last year. I enjoyed it. We got good feedback from our audience. And so I think that we'll do it again. If anybody has a problem, they should tell us. And if they want us to keep going by the end of next year, you need to let us know. And so we can keep doing this. Okay, so I think what would be helpful, and maybe this is the teacher in me that thinks that you should always tell people how you are measuring them. So I had a list of things that I looked at. And of course, you have a different mind, so you may have different things that you looked at. And I wouldn't say that I put any kind of weighting or numbers, because that's way more detail. Can you believe I said that? Way more detail than Sabrina was willing to do at the end of the year. And so, but here are some of the things that I was looking at, and you can tell me if these are also considerations on your part. It was for the driver, what was their points acquisition, how we looked at their tire management over the course of the year, their strategy, their working with their team, their racecraft, comparing them to their teammate, notable moments or even notable races. I even thought about their media presence, their resilience, because as we know, every driver is got his own challenges. Right. And so how did he push through that? And what was his level of mental strength that we can observe as third parties, fans of the sport? Did they improve or decline from last year? I liked to think about their maturity on and off the track. And then finally, I'd say I tried to think about crashes and mistakes that they may have made over the year. And so all of that kind of was in my mind as I came to this analysis. But again, I didn't sit there and go 1 point or 2 point, because no, they don't need that. You don't need that. And I don't think the audience wants Sabrina to do that either.
No, it's a really, really good list. And of course, I tend to think about drivers from the perspective of okay, who's the guy this year, right? And why is that the case? And is it just because, the old deal that, like our friend says, fast cars make fast drivers, or is it that they really are that good? And so I think it'll be interesting to see what you come up with, because I kind of have this stratification in my mind where there's 2 or 3 of the guys that are truly head and shoulders better than the others. Maybe there's more than 3, but not more than 5. And then there's everybody else. And so how do they stack up? And sometimes how they stack up is completely masked by the disaster of the car that they're driving, right? Or a car think about Ferrari, even just 2 years ago, we were calling them the circular firing squad, right? Because they found new ways to lose, right? Well, that's not the driver's fault, but at the same time, he is a member of the team. And so part of that responsibility does fall on him. So how do you grade that? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting. So
yeah, I think you're right. Because I know for me, when I hear people say, oh, so-and-so's only good because they've got the best car, it really kind of annoys me, because the car is a major component for why a driver is successful. And if you have, like you said, if you have a bad car, it masks a good driver. And I think we'll get to that in some of the drivers that we're going to analyze. I would never say that they're terrible or awful, but they unfortunately were in cars or in team situations that didn't allow them to maximize their fullest potential. And so do you then knock the driver in his ability to be, maybe Billy's not the right word, his placement on the grid? I don't know. I don't think that's fair. But then at the same time, we also have situations, I think this year shows that somebody may have an excellent car, but they're not able to take everything out of it.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. Yep.
I think no team really can handle that. They want to then move on from that. So I agree. I think you're right. And that's why I appreciate the fact that we can have this conversation and bring two different perspectives, but I think we can also find very similar visions of how we would want to fairly assess people. It actually, again, does remind me of my days of report cards and like having to evaluate my students. And I actually was in a collaborative teaching situation where I had 4 other teachers. They taught other subjects and we would all come together and look and discuss. We all taught the same 150 kids. So we could see where there are trends or issues that one teacher was only experiencing or across their board. And so I do think having different perspectives in assessment is always a good thing.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's our preamble. Let's get to it then. I think that let's just start from the top of the grid, kind of. I don't know. It was the list that I came up with, and I don't really remember at this point how I decided this was the groups to go with. But it was Max, Checo, Yuki, and Liam. You want me to go first?
Go first.
Okay, so Max, I would say, is unbelievable. He is an unbelievable talent, I should say. Even when the car wasn't optimal this year, he was able to bring forth races that truly I was astonished to witness. Then Checo, I would say, I don't know when this will actually air, but all the signs are there that this is the end of Checo's career at Red Bull. Could he land elsewhere? I don't know, but quite possibly I think that this is the end of the road for him. But I think what he brought to the team was experience within the sport, which was valuable. And I think that was one of the many reasons why the team continued to hold on to him versus moving to any of the other options. I think that they probably thought about Danny Ricciardo, and he did have the same almost, I can't remember when he entered the sport versus Checo, but like you wanted the experience, but unfortunately, I don't think that there was enough to justify that swap out. But especially for teams trying to move up further into the standings, I could see them deciding to bring Checo in if they had an open seat, like the Cadillac option in the future.
Right. Yep.
But I don't know that I would give him a lot of hope because of how everything I think is looking like it's going to go. With Yuki, I really want to be able to confidently say he deserves that Red Bull seat, but my suspicion is that it's unlikely to open up. I think he should then settle into Racing Bulls and make himself the number 1 and build that team around himself, proving to everyone how much he has matured. And who knows, it is still a Red Bull family car. It could still get up there, I would think, and could he eventually really prove that he has what it takes to be at the top of the grid? I don't know, but I think I want to give him that hope because I really just like the kid. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I think I said in the very early part of our podcast that I'm really disappointed in the way that he had conducted himself. That was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years that I said that. But I've seen so much that's changed in Yuki that has made me really rooting for him and saying, I can see you're growing and really see the importance of how you conduct yourself to be just as important as proving to everybody that you're capable of doing this. And then the last would be Liam. I have to say, I don't think he's the best fit, but he may be the choice that Red Bull has to make because there are no other options that make better sense. But I'm still have a question mark regarding Liam and if that's the right person to be on the other side of Max.
So I think, just to maybe throw some counterpoints out there or at least confirm some of your thoughts, with Max, I mean, there's no question that, he's one of the very, very top guys out there. He has certainly to me this year not having the best car in the second half of the season. It's hard for us to remember, but at the beginning of the year, we were like, oh, well, 2024 is just a repeat of 2023. This is, boring. And, when's the season over? It's one of those kind of deals, but it didn't work out that way. He was actually put under a lot of pressure and he showed the mental toughness that he needed to show. Drive in Brazil in the rain, unbelievable. It's pretty much, if it's going to rain, Max is probably your guy just because he's so good in the wet, man. And that's really a reflection of the fact that he's got such good sense of what kind of grip levels he's got in every single corner. You just see it more in the wet than you do in the dry. With Checo, it's really funny. A friend of mine and I were talking today, and we were actually talking about the NFL, but he made a comment that I really think applies to Checo. And the comment that he made is that the mark of a really, really good coach is somebody who can take a player who is maybe of better than average talent, but not a superstar, and help them to turn in performances that are actually beyond what you would think on paper they're capable of. And a really, really interesting idea about what a team leader can do. And I think that if there has ever been a display of the shortcomings of Red Bull and specifically Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, I would say Checo is it. Horner, I'm sure, has said multiple times, I've certainly read it once or twice, that, hey, we've done everything we could to make sure that Checo knew he was wanted and loved and cared for and blah, 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 all those things. And that may be true. But the reality is that they didn't go out there and squash the rumors that were out there on the internet. And because of their lack of credibility, it's pretty much if either of those guys say, oh, this is patently untrue, it must be true. And I'm not saying that to be a jerk or overly critical, but it's just sort of like you almost have to take that with a grain of salt. And so I felt like my friend's comment about a football coach actually applied to the way Red Bull's being run. Regarding Yuki, I'm like you. I mean, he's turned in some pretty stout performances. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we all expected Daniel Ricciardo to come in and show Yuki the door, but no, it turned out the other way around. Yuki showed Daniel the door. And we saw in Daniel, sadly, that as his season wore on, his mental resilience that had been kind of questioned at McLaren, it was back. I mean, again, I don't for a second believe Checo or Daniel, either one of them, have forgotten how to drive, but their confidence is not there. And therefore, it becomes a really much more difficult thing. Liam, on the other hand, I think it's too early really to give any kind of grade to Liam. I mean, obviously, he's going to be Max's teammate for next year, but I think it's just really, really interesting because I think he was selected because he has a driving style that is more in line with the driving style that Max has. And I think Horner and Marko are desperate to prove that they can get this figured out because everybody's talking about Albon and Gasly being moved into the number 2 seat at Red Bull way too soon. And Horner himself has said we may have moved Liam in there too fast, but we think that he'll be okay because his driving style is more like Max. I mean, we'll see, right? Very complicated politics within those two teams, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting that the politics have had such an impact on these drivers and their ability to extract everything out of the car. When you were talking about it, I was like, oh, wait, Dick, we're going to have a whole different conversation about the team principles. But then I realized, wait a minute, no, you really can't overlook the impact, especially in this team, the principal and advisor of Hellman and Horner have had on these 4 drivers. And I even wonder how hard I think I've said this before, how hard it must be for Laurent Mekies at Racing Bulls. You're technically the team principal, but it feels like you're kind of not because
most definitely not.
Right? It's Christian Horner who's really making the decisions for your team as much as they may tell us they're not. But yeah, I feel good listening to what you're saying, especially because even though I'm not technically a rookie anymore, I am not definitely as seasoned as you are. I feel validated and also challenged in my thinking when you bring up what you have said. It is questionable the impact that it has on Checo as to the coaching style and really everybody when you really look at the whole deck of people that have gone through that seat. And if Checo, someone who is over the course of his career, or especially his recent career before he came to Red Bull, kind of had those moments of resilience to the point that everyone's like, oh, Checo's still there. And he was able to help his teams get further down the road. But in this case, it doesn't happen in a car that especially everyone is before this year started, right? We all were enamored with the RB19, but with the 20, the expectation was it was going to be great. And he would also do fantastic in that car. Yeah, you bring a lot of good points in. I'll have to think through that. But okay, so what are our grades that we want to give? Do you want me to go first?
You go first. You're the
Okay.
teacher.
I'm the teacher. Okay, so for Max, I would say an A. I'm not giving him an A plus because he didn't like knock it out of the park like he did last year. You know, every race basically was his, but I definitely would say an A. And I think that I feel like he would even say that is that he probably is really glad he won the championship. He worked harder. He didn't hear as many so lovelies as you did in 2023. So I think he knows he really worked hard for this. And so an A is great. Checo, I would say a C. And it's because I think that he pushed himself as much as he could. He didn't give up. He didn't like walk away.
Yep.
And
You went down fighting.
He did. He did. There are certain things I think I wished he would have done a little differently in that fight, but but I don't see him as like in any way failing this analysis. Yuki, I would give a B plus. And that's largely because I see the improvement in him. So that makes me want to give him more weight on that. And then with Liam, I would actually say a B. And largely because it's still to be determined. He has had some moments of like where it shines. But then I also, I'm still unsettled. So B is about as comfortable as I feel giving.
Yep. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I mean, for me, it's really hard to grade Liam because, you know, we didn't get to see him even for half a season, right? I mean, he came in towards the end of the year. And so, you know, I don't think there's any question the guy is really talented and they must see that, you know, he's made of some pretty tough stuff. I mean, think about his run-in with Alonso. I mean, he was just sort of like, I don't care that Fernando's mad. I mean, who cares, you know? Who? You know, Fernando who? So there's a little bit of that attitude that, you know, you kind of got to have as a racing driver. So let's see. Okay.
So then that's Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Now let's move on to the next group on our list. It would be the Ferrari boys. Well, one who's no longer Ferrari, but at least for the 24 season.
Sure.
Okay. So I'll go first again.
You do. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Carlos, I would say he is a class act all the way. I mean, I had tears in my eyes at each of the last races. He carried himself with such dignity and strength. I've said it before and I'll say it again. He is underrated and he makes everyone around him, every team that he's been on has been better and able to move forward. Every teammate that has allowed themselves to have a good relationship with him has only improved. And I can say I'm kind of now a Carlos fangirl. I was truly inspired by him this season. I don't know if it's just who he is and it wasn't broadcast. Maybe it's his PR team. Maybe it was a very calculated decision of how he was going to conduct himself publicly. But I just really was impressed by the whole way he handled what seemed to be the biggest curveball anybody could have received on the Formula Grid of his age as well. Because in his trajectory, it just seemed like, what in the world? And I was inspired in so many ways as like just a human being of watching how he carried himself this year.
Yeah.
So that's Carlos.
Yeah.
On Charles, I'm glad to see that he pushed himself this season. I've seen growth and improvement. Right now, I want him to harden himself and be prepared to fight, to come out and push back on all the naysayers, not to make mistakes, to fight and to fight really hard. He is about to go against arguably the greatest of all time. I don't necessarily give that title, but I know many do.
Statistically.
Right, exactly. I guess I come at it as I don't have the ability to compare other greats in the sport, but I think for his generation, definitely this is the GOAT. He being Charles, he needs to use this to his advantage to build that resilience now and pull from somewhere deep inside. Like, I think this is the make or break for Charles mentally, and I really want him to see for himself that he has it in him and the system is actually built in his favor. So now go extract it and be as shrewd, but that sounds negative, but it's shrewd as in wise in how you approach this. And don't let self-doubt, don't let any of the things that he's clearly battled, don't let that get you. Like, this is the moment, go grasp it.
Right.
That's what I would say to him if I were sitting, like giving him this report card.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think just to expand upon some of the things that you were saying, you know, if we think about Carlos, everything that I've read about Carlos and have tried to discern from what we can see, the guy's got a terrific work ethic. And I think that work ethic is part of what causes teams to build around him. The other part is I think he brings a technical prowess that maybe a lot of drivers don't bring. You know, you got to believe that a Lewis or a Fernando would bring that sort of technical prowess to the table. So yeah, I think you have to put him up there. Maybe not the most supremely talented driver, and understand this guy's really, really, really good, but he's maybe isn't max, right? But on the other hand, unbelievable work ethic and that technical prowess has really helped like bring Ferrari to the forefront. I mean, I really feel like when he leaves, you know, Lewis and Charles are going to have to step up to fill in a pretty big gap, you know, and they're certainly capable of doing that. But you know, Ferrari lost a lot and they lost Carlos. As far as Charles is concerned, I'm like you. I've seen him grow a lot. Not as many mistakes, not as much emotional outbursts. He's been way more under emotional control. And, you know, he's going against Lewis. I don't know that Lewis in the last couple of years has been maybe as motivated as what Lewis was when he was, you know, winning world championship after world championship. But again, this is a guy that is going to be a formidable teammate. And whether Charles likes it or not, the spotlight, you know, is bad enough being Ferrari's, you know, number one driver for the last few years. Let's remember, he pretty much made Ferrari decide to send Sebastian Vettel packing, right? And so now that spotlight is turned on to Lewis, and man, it ought to be really interesting to see how the media handles it, how Charles handles it. You know, Lewis could care less. So that's going to be really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of mental games that are going to happen between the two. And like, because you think, like, especially with Charles, as you said, his relationship with Seb was very different than what it is with Carlos and what will be with Lewis. I keep thinking that for all of Italy, for all Ferrari fans, you've watched Charles grow. Like, he came as such a young boy and you've watched him kind of mature. And now he's going to be tested by a formidable man who is driven. Like, we've also watched him grow in this sport, and it's going to be very interesting. I hope that Charles comes out and does his very best, so that way, no matter what the results are, he can say to himself, I did my best, and not have the mental pain or trauma that he's going to walk away from this. You know, I just think he's set up in the best way possible for something like this. So he's just got to take it all, extract it all himself. Okay, so I would give the letter of A to Carlos in this largely, and I'll tell you why. I will never forget his win at Australia after that appendix being removed.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that was on par with the mental, physical toll that when you talk about the Brazil race in the rain.
Yep.
I just remember watching that. I had tears in my eyes, I'm pretty sure. I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it. And then listening to Carlos's interview where he shared all the uncertainty of and what they had to do to physically get him into that car. And even on practice that they weren't even sure. You know, like, to me, I was like, good night. That's amazing. And so for that alone, that puts him in a category to me this year of, you're kind of a rock star in my head right now. Because I don't even know how they do it to begin with because of all the physical toll. And then you just had major surgery. Yeah. I have to give him that. Charles, I would actually give an A minus, and that's because of a lot of the growth and all the things that you really noted. And but it's not like an A plus or even an A, like it's an A minus.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because I was debating in my mind, is Charles a B plus or an A minus? So yeah, we're close. I'd say A minus, no problem. Yeah.
What about Carlos?
Yeah, I would say an A. He, again, this sounds a little crazy, but Carlos kind of punched above his weight, didn't he?
Or at least what we've been told to expect of him.
Yeah.
like, or what we've
Yeah.
been, I feel like that was the other part that I really liked. He just left nothing on the table.
Yep.
I really appreciated that this year. Like
Yep.
he walked out with his head held high. Okay, that's enough. I know I'm fangirling, so let's stop the Carlos and Charles discussion. Move on to the McLaren boys, Norris and Piastri. So for Lando, here's what I'd say. He has, well, I'll talk to him. You have the building blocks. Now is your moment. Don't second guess yourself. In many ways, it's very similar to what I would say to Charles. Believe in yourself and your team. Be the leader you've been working so hard to develop. This is your year to prove to yourself and others that you have what it takes to be the champion. Be the person of integrity and class we all see while being the hardest racer. Because those are all the areas that I feel like he's questioned. In that sense, I feel he's very similar to Charles last year and the year before of kind of like, can I, should I, how do I do this? How do I move from being an excellent race driver to a champion race driver? Right. And I think he has it. He just needs to unlock whatever that is, unshackle himself so that way he can actually be in that same caliber as Max. I think he has what it takes. And I think he's made some significant strides over the course of this year. And I'm hoping that over the break, he's telling himself the stuff that I just said, like, you can do this. Just believe in yourself and your team because your team is there for you. Okay. Oscar, I would say, is time for the gloves to come off, which feels so weird after saying all this wonderful stuff about Lando. But like for Oscar, I feel like he has been a slow burn and now is the time. There has never been a more important time to say, I'm putting my stamp on the season and I'm going to do it early. And that fire that's within him, he's got to let it blaze out bright and come out of the gate steadfast, and that all he's been working towards can come together for next year, and that he's going to challenge himself, his teammate, and his team to the best of his ability. And I think that this team, if they can do that, both of these guys have the ability to really challenge each other in, like, they almost are yin and yang in my mind. Like, I don't think Oscar questioned himself at the way that Lando does. And I want to see Lando have the confidence that Oscar has kind of shown this quiet strength. And then with Oscar, I really want him to see that he can push the team in a way that that will benefit not only himself, but even push Lando. Like, let it be some really good, hard nose, clean racing between the two of them and make it even. I think that if anybody can handle dealing that, it actually is Zach Brown and Stella. They can handle it. Managing two like thoroughbred young stallions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2025 is going to be really interesting. Now, 2024, if we think about it, I don't think there was any doubt Lando was the team leader, but he had a guy, an Oscar, who certainly was pushing him all the time. And of course, Lando pushed Oscar. So, I mean, to your point, I think that they are good for each other as long as they can remain, like this really strong mutual respect kind of thing. And Zach and Stella keep two highly motivated and ambitious guys in check. Then I think you're going to look at a very formidable team for next year. I do believe that Oscar is probably more ruthless than Lando is. And I think that it would not surprise me that Oscar would be the first to disobey team orders. That would be my guess. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. If they do their work.
That's a good point.
Yeah. If they do their homework over the winter, McLaren's going to come out. They're going to be right there. If not the gold standard, they're going to be right there. And so, Lando and Oscar have the opportunity to basically put their foot on the neck of the opposition and just finish the season early. But you never know what may come out of Red Bull or Ferrari or whatever. So, I think that because the potential for the opposition is going to be so strong, Lando and Oscar are going to be forced to work together to push each other, to push the team, just like you said, in order to be able to respond to the attacks that are no doubt going to be coming from Red Bull and Ferrari and probably Mercedes and, all that. So We'll see.
Do you see this as a 2.0 version of the Senna Prost rivalry? I don't. I've seen people say that, and I just don't see it. I think they're two very different rivalries.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a different bunch. I mean, just a little bit that I've heard from, people who know Lando. He is a genuinely decent, high integrity, high character kind of guy. And obviously his parents did a great job raising him. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so, but at the same time, he is a racer and he is, he's really quick. So yeah, I don't know quite where I'm going with this, but it just seems to me that that's the way it's going to go. They're going to have to pull together because the opposition is just too strong.
Yeah. I just don't see either one of them pulling some of the stunts. That's the only word I can think of right now that we think of when it comes to the Senna Prost rivalry.
Yeah.
I would really hope, I would be disappointed. I would rather, as you said, if they disobey, okay, fine, but let's not do any shenanigans that causes harm to the team. I think they're both smart enough to know that the team needs to continue winning. Okay, I would actually give both of these guys A's. And not A pluses, not A minuses, A's. I feel really good about these kids. You?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of B plus, and the reason was just, they weren't hugely spectacular until they came in with the big upgrade that was so successful in Miami. And
good point.
And that upgrade inspired confidence in those guys, and it showed, right? But at the same time, the reason I thought about it for so long is that the other side of it is fast cars make fast drivers, right? Our friend Dave Young, that's what his saying is all the time, right? And so you kind of have to temper it with a little bit of that, I think. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yes, I think it's a very fascinating point that you brought up, that their acceleration or their enhancement of what they were doing really comes after the significant upgrade. I'm gonna have to think through that. Okay. We'll come back to that later in
because the other side of it is, oh no, they were driving their rear ends off all year long. It's just you didn't know it until they got it right with that upgrade. That's the other side of that argument. And you know what? That's a valid point too.
Right.
Yeah, tough one.
Well, and you also, going back to somebody who didn't have the optimal car, but extracted it, if you compare it against Max, I guess I was just trying to think through that analysis. I wonder if it's because Max has got more experience, more time. He's just Max versus these two who are still a little bit junior to him, and they have not had the experience of winning a championship. There's two ways to look at it.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, so we'll come back to that if we can. Hamilton and Russell. Here's what I'll say. Russell, this is the moment you have waited for. You have been in Lewis's shadow, and now you get to step into the sun. Continue with your technical skill. Show us your heart and your racing spirit. Bring us along with you on this journey. I think that was one of the many things that Lewis was really skilled at doing. Make us want to cheer you on. Show us who you are. It's clear you have what it takes to be a champion. I don't remember. We've done an interview. I don't know when that will air in comparison to this episode, but we had someone who is very knowledgeable highlight, many within the industry highlight that Russell is technically so leaps and bounds to his peers of his racing demographic, like age-wise. And so that's what makes me think that. So right now, I would say to Russell, your team needs you more than they have ever before. Lead them through this wilderness back to their strength. You've been with teams when it was so hard, so find within you the ability to help them move on to that high ground again. I really want Russell to just shock everybody as to how he can be team leader and driver number one. Okay, with Lewis. May this transition be all that you hope for it to be. I hope that it reinvigorates you again. You've seemed down since 2021. And I mean, he just seems broken. And I really hope that Tifosi sentiment carries him back to the joys of racing. I don't want him to be paranoid by the culture shock. I want him to embed himself in and enjoy this journey, because ultimately this guy has proven his racing ability is really unmatched. So don't like think about that. Just come back to the love of racing that you had when it like your first love and do that inside the Ferrari world. Like what better place for any racer to come back and revitalize their love for racing?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. So there's a gentleman that you, Sabrina, met named Greg Bell, who is like one of the very top guys here in the United States when it comes to karting. And he actually ran George Russell at this massive kart race in Las Vegas that years ago when he did this. And he will tell you that George won this race. And he said that he knew from the get-go that this guy was really special. He says, I've worked with a lot of exceptional racing drivers. It was clear, even at the young age, I can't remember how old he was at the time, like 14, 15 years old. He said, this guy just impressed everybody. And so, I think, that technical sympathy was there probably at a very young age. It may be something that's pretty innate with George. So certainly a guy like Greg Bell, he's seen an awful lot of drivers. And so I really rate what he says about George as a driver, even though his experience was from, 10 or 12 years ago. So I thought that was really cool to get that. And as far as Lewis, I mean, statistically, he's the GOAT. And I think that this move to Ferrari will revitalize him. I think he's needed a change of scenery. I think we may very well see the old Lewis again, which, I mean, I would love to see that, and have him in a position to take it to them, So if I was going to go and give a grade to those guys, I would give George an A-. I'd give Lewis probably a B. I think he was a little bit disheartened and a little bit demotivated and kind of ready for 2025.
Well, we're of like mind on that then, because that's what I had. And I think that I wrote an A- and a B+. What did you say? What did you say?
A- and a B, I think is it.
Okay. So, I also, as you were talking, I started thinking it would be really kind of cool if the Lewis revitalization happens as this new F1 movie comes out and like everyone gets to see like the film and then they see this amazing moment in the sport where this champion comes back again in the film, but then they see that it's happening also in the reality and you couple that with the Ferrari and just just the iconic aspect of it.
Sure.
And then if you still have Max sitting there challenging, I mean, really 25, I'm grinning from ear to ear. You can't see, the audience can't see, but hopefully you can hear it in my voice. I'm glad for the break. I needed the break, but I'm really excited to see where the racing goes in 25. Okay. Yeah. So that's our Lewis and Russell. Let's switch to the next pairing, Alonso and Stroll. So Fernando, I know, like I would say to him, I know you've given it your all. I can see you've grown so much in these last years. I can see your desire to achieve that next championship. And I actually believe that you can. And you carry Aston just a little bit longer. You are definitely what they need. You're an inspiration to so many of us about not letting barriers hold you back and keep pushing yourself to achieve more and more. I think I come to that conclusion largely because I know that you, Dick, are such a fan of Fernando. And all the things that you've highlighted about him have made me only respect him more because of the insights you've had as to his career and where he's at in his career now. Then for Lance, I'd say I don't have anything other to say than I hope you're happy remaining on the grid. If not, your team needs you to make a decision to leave. Allow other talent into that seat. And if you remain happy, then keep going, put your all in. And maybe we have yet to see your very best because the car hasn't been where you need it to be. Like it's not fair in some ways to compare you to a champion like Alonso and his ability to extract that car. But there have been many times over the course of this season where he was very close to Alonso, especially earlier in the year before all this tumbling of the standings. And I think that was the mishap of whatever upgrades that ended up being downgrades. Yeah. But there were many moments where Lance did very good in comparison to his teammate. So I just would want Lance to be certain that he really wants to do this. If not, we have some amazing talent out there that needs that seat, and let Aston get to where they need to get to.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Fernando made that car. I mean, he flattered the car on a lot of occasions. They brought that upgrade package at Imola, and it was a downgrade, and they never seemed to get a handle on it. I think that while Fernando was able to extract more from the car than really what the car should have had, we saw him in a couple of instances, like at Imola, overdrive the car, and the car got away from him and he crashed. Very, very rare to see Fernando do that, but it shows just how hard he was trying and how difficult that car was to deal with. So I think Fernando, towards the end of the year, admitted that he was kind of losing interest in the season because he knew that they just had no shot with the car, which is totally understandable. But at the same time, you kind of hate to see Fernando in a position once again with a car that isn't so great. For Lance, it's really easy for everyone to dogpile on Lance, but like you said, compared to Fernando, he had moments where he actually did quite well. And so I think that while he really struggled, I kind of wonder if his struggles were similar to what Checo had to deal with in terms of having to deal with a car that just didn't suit him. I mean, the car didn't suit Alonso either, but he's so experienced. He kind of knew how to drive around it. Not necessarily the case for Lance. I mean, he's got a lot of race experience, but he doesn't have Fernando's race experience. And so in many cases, I think he was doing his best to drive a car that really had square wheels. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to poo-poo the kid, because I think he's actually probably a pretty decent driver, but he's in a very difficult circumstance.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what you said also goes back to your earlier comments regarding Checo and coaching, that in the environment of Aston, Lance, whatever he's needing is helping him not lose the mental battle.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I'm glad you made that connection point, because that's very valid. And I'm with you. I don't see a need to dogpile on him. Okay. We need to give the letters for Fernando and Lance.
Great.
Do you want to go first?
I'd say for Fernando, a B plus, because I know that he got kind of dispirited towards the end of the year, and I don't blame him. We're all human beings and all that. But, if we were to ignore the last, call it 5 or 6 races, then I would say probably deserving of an A, because like I said, he made that car punch above its weight. Lance, I would probably give probably a B minus. There were certainly times when, talk about dispirited, I mean, you see him after the race and he was like, this car's horrible. I mean, and at that level, you kind of have to go for it, and drive around whatever you have, drive what they've been giving you. But overall, I think given the expectations that they had going into the season and versus the reality of what they had that season, who wouldn't have been defeated feeling?
Right. Right. Yeah, especially as it just kept dragging on from their perspective, right? Like, we're enjoying it, but when you're not seeing the change to the car that you need and you feel like you're putting everything in.
Right.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I actually had the same grades as well, and for very much the same reason. And the only place that I would add a note would be for Lance. I wanted to give a B versus a B minus, but that whole incident at Sao Paulo when he turned off into the gravel and caused all that situation, I understand that there was something, if I remember correctly, there was something related to the car, but there was still something, I feel like it was like car as well as temperament at that point. And that's where I went, I wished you hadn't had the temperament side, because but that's also goes back to what you said. But by that point of the season, the car is not improving, level of frustration, and especially that race. I mean, it pushed everybody to their limits. So I give him that, but he's also not a rookie. Like, rookies handled it. I felt like it was kind of a rookie thing to do. And so that's why I couldn't go a little bit higher, but I really do like him and want to see him only succeed. Okay. So that goes to our next pair, Albon and Colapinto. So for me, I would say to Alex, I think you're probably nervous. and I don't think you should be. Carlos and you will be great together. Both of you seem to be good human beings, so create a partnership that will move Williams back to the front. Each of you came from the Red Bull world, so you have shared knowledge and individual strengths to challenge each other and your team to be the best that you can be. I feel like that Red Bull training, even though they went through it at different times and walked away with different experiences, that's like a shared communication and style that maybe actually can benefit them. And I remember in Carlos's interview that he actually highlighted that they already had a conversation that day when he was dealing with his appendix recovery and coming back to the track, that they apparently live right across the hallway from each other. And he said that he talked to Alex about how to protect his body, he being Carlos, to deal with the pressure the car was going to put on him. So like, I felt like as I listened to that, I thought that's good. That's what I want to see of healthy competition between people, even in the ultra competitive world of Formula One, is that you're not wanting the person to have further health complications. You want them to be the best that they can be, and then you beat them. Like you don't want it to be anything other than that. So I thought that's really good for them as teammates. Colapinto, I would say to him, don't be discouraged if a seat does not open up. Stick with it. Take whatever opportunities come your way to keep racing, i.e. like other series and things that you can keep up your racecraft. Maintain those relationships between Formula One. You never know how things could change. Like literally, we have seen that. You just never know. So just keep going. Don't lose heart.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I think my comments here, Alex was dealt with an interesting hand in that, the Williams at the beginning of the year was quite overweight. And so he was driving, the moment he would roll out of the garage, he was definitely at a handicap. And he dealt with that. And he also dealt with the fact that they didn't have many spares. There was a lot of crashes. And so there was a lot of times when upgrades that should have been available were carbon fiber shards laying on the side of the road. And the only spares the team had was the old style stuff. And so I think it was a really trying year. It would be interesting to know if he feels like he grew in maturity, because this is the kind of season that would grow you from a maturity level. Colapinto, I think he's an amazing talent. I agree. I think he's going to do Formula 2 next year again. He had a very bright spotlight put on him. And he responded well for a while, and then the pressure got to him, and, a lot of big crashes. But I've always said the really, really great ones start off fast and hairy, and they crash a lot. And then if they are truly destined for greatness, they learn their lessons, they clean it up, and they make fewer mistakes, and they're still lightning fast. And so that's my hope for Colapinto, is that he will learn from his mistakes and then come back and have the opportunity to go and take part in F1 again, because I think he's probably a significant talent. This is a question of can somebody find him a seat.
I agree. I don't have anything to add to that. I would say that in the report card for both of them, I would give Alex a B plus, and I would give Franco a B.
I think I would give Alex a B plus. I would give Franco a C plus because of all the crashes.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point, especially as the season progressed. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. Now going on to Valtteri and Joe. My heart is just sad in the sense of it goes back to your statement about a car masking drivers. I feel like they're the epitome of that, especially Valtteri, because we know what he can do in a car.
Yeah.
And so, okay, here's what I'll say. For Valtteri, thank you for you and providing a light into what makes you tick. This tenure with Sauber wasn't what you expected. Rather than become bitter, though, you found motivation and joy from other places, and that actually inspired me. I feel like he could have really just become an angry person, but we didn't see that. And that, as in sportsmanship, I think is a very important quality. And I think that also that will bode him well in his future. For Joe, I say congratulations on the points in Qatar and the amazing moment at the Chinese Grand Prix. You've blazed a trail so far. I don't know if it's ended, but you're definitely one that should never be forgotten in the sport. And I think, especially because I don't remember if it was this year or at the end of last year, there was an interview with Joe, and he moved from China at the age of 13 to England to do racing and considering that in a country that doesn't have a history of the motorsport and what he has achieved, I just really, when we watched the Chinese Grand Prix, I had tears in my eyes then. I remember that. And I was so glad that he got points. And so for me, I really want them to know both of them in their own way have bettered the sport by carrying themselves the way that they carried themselves.
Yeah, I was, when I think about those two guys and the horrific season that they endured through no fault of their own, they're both class acts. I mean, that's all there is to it. And you didn't hear them throwing tantrums or anything like that, even though it must have been just beyond frustrating. Again, fast cars make fast drivers, right? It would have been nice to have seen them in a car that was actually remotely competitive. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially when you think about others that were in cars that were not optimal and how they conducted themselves. And if you compared these guys, they carried themselves like Lewis and Max, right? Their dignity that they attempted to have is on par in my mind. They being Valtteri and Joe. They didn't throw their team under the bus. They didn't, like you said, whine about it. They just went out there and kept trying. And that I think is commendable. I give them both B pluses.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, good. Okay, Nico and Kevin. So here's what I'd say to Nico. You have brought Haas into a position of strength. You're underrated. You have a healthy sense of self, and I look forward to seeing you take Sauber and Audi into the future. If anyone can navigate the challenging situation, I actually believe it's you. And then with Kevin, your return to the sport allowed all of us to have a new perception of you, and I'm grateful for it. I saw you in a different light this season. Haas needed you this season. You were critical to their move forward in the standings.
Yeah, I think dead on the money about Nico being underrated. And, I mean, we've heard people who know say part of what Nico brings to the table is the fact that he's done endurance sports car racing. And so when it comes to tire management and all those other things, he's quite strong at it. And as far as Kevin is concerned, I mean, the guy is like really, really quick, and I'm not really sure I understand why Haas dropped him. And he knew he was being dropped pretty early in the season. And so I guess I'm just a little bit puzzled by that. But he, at the same time, man, he went down fighting all the way to the end, didn't he? I was really impressed. I mean, that is one dog that's got a lot of fight. Hats off to him, man. Tip of the hat.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Grades?
Okay, grades. I actually gave both of them B pluses.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
I agree. Good. All right. So then our next pairing is Pierre and Esteban.
Couple.
Yes. He's in the... It's so... But, by the end of the year, they seem to have found some level of mutual, like, détente. I don't know the admiration, but like some level of respect for each other.
Right.
So Pierre, I would say I'm most impressed by your continued loyalty to your team, and even more by the stat that you didn't cost your team any crash damages. You had many moments during the... Isn't that amazing? Like, I can't... I was really surprised, to be honest, because I thought he had damage in Monaco, but apparently that doesn't qualify because it wasn't technically a crash. I don't know. But I was like, this is wow. Never in the history of the sport is what I understand has that ever happened. So that's cool. So I would say is you've had many moments during the year where your skill was obvious, even though not always on the broadcast. Like you really had to watch stuff outside of what was being shown immediately and go back and look at things. You endured a lot of ups and downs this season as well, but you maintained commitment and a positive attitude. And so I commend you for that. Considering everything that was going on in that team, I just like the fact that he was steady, loyal to the team and just coming and doing his job to the best of his abilities. I have respect for that.
Yep, agreed.
Esteban, this year, I would say for him, he seemed to have reined in or corrected some of his behaviors and tactics that put off many within and outside the paddock. I hope that in the move to Haas, he is able to come in with a fresh mind and a fresh heart. I'm hoping he's healed whatever it is that gave that perception either internally or externally, and that this is really a true restart. I think that in Ayo Komatsu, you have a team principal that will be able to believe in you and willing to help you unlock your fullest potential. Like I have a lot of respect for Ayo Komatsu. I just been just in awe of what he's been able to do. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think maybe that's just the thing that Esteban needs.
Yeah. I mean, Alpine, from a managerial standpoint, right? They've been in chaos for quite a while, and that seems to have settled down the dust. But, while all that was going on, they got way off track with their car. And when they showed up this year, the car, like the Williams, way overweight, wasn't a good car. And both those guys put their head down, worked with the team, and really, towards the end of the year, they were starting to become a threat to the top five. And my comment would be is look out for Gasly next year in the Alpine, because they may be pretty stout. But having said that, freaking Haas was really good this year when you really think about it. And Ocon, as mercurial as he is, man, when he gets it together, that guy is as fast as anybody out there. And I think that if they give him a car that in the overall pecking order is as good or maybe a little better than they were in 2024, the midfield is going to be very close to the front of the field. And I think it's going to be absolute bloodbath.
I think you're right. I feel that that's the only way it can land, because they all ended the season at such a high level. And when I think about what you said at the beginning of the season about those incremental ability, like the margins, well, all the teams that are at the top right now, they're kind of all at the margins, but those at the back, oh, they have so much room to improve. I'm just like so excited for next year. I mean, I may have to start like a countdown clock for it.
That's right.
Really.
Well,
We may have to do that.
If you think about Mercedes, who are kind of borderline midfield to front of the field, depending on the track, think about Mercedes, you think about Aston Martin, you think about Haas, you think about Alpine, right? There's 4 teams right there that could absolutely throw a spanner into everything. I think Audi and their new guys, I think they're going to struggle. I mean, in 2026, probably not so much, but I think 2025 may not be more of the same, but I don't see them in the midfield. And then who knows about Williams? So anyway, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Wow. This is so much fun. I love racing. I love Formula One. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to share your thoughts. Oh, wait, did we do the letters? No, we didn't. Did we do the letters for Pierre and Esteban?
We did not.
Okay, we got to do it. We got to give the full report card. You go first.
For Pierre, I would give him an A-. For Esteban, I'd give him a B.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I actually had a B for both of them.
Oh, okay.
I really want to know why you gave Pierre an A. Is it because oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think that he probably had as much to do with stabilizing his team. I mean, he made the team his, especially after Ocon caused the crash in Monaco.
Good point.
I think he built the team around him. That is his team, and he just, took it. And so, yeah, that's why I gave him an A. And I think, the other part with Esteban, I could have given him a little bit of a lower grade, but like you said, towards the end of the year, he seemed to mature a lot. Somebody finally got through to him and made him really stop and think. And so, yeah, he kind of grew up.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. I know that we want to do a part 2. We'll talk to the team principals next, or what we think that they may be saying to their teams and stakeholders. So we'll do that. And I would say to any of our listeners, now is the time to go back and listen to our evergreen content, like our tech series and a lot of the different things that we've tried to put out there that will educate fans to the overall sport, while we continue to create things like this that are specific to our season. I just can't believe that we're already at the end of 2024 and looking towards 25. So excited.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Okay, Dick, I look forward to our next conversation.
As do I.
Okay, friends, what did you think of our conversation? Drop me a line via email, Sabrina at 2guysagirlandf1.com. Can you help us out? If you haven't already, please take a moment to follow us and give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, as well as share this episode with other F1 fans. We know our growth is because of you, and the guys and I thank you. And with that, let me say, we'll keep talking and you can keep listening in because we're just 2 guys, a girl, and F1. For John, Dick, and me, Sabrina, thanks for listening.